welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli, that's Bud Elliott, that's Danny Cannell. I'm Chip Patterson, coming to you live at youtube.com/Cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate. We got a lot here on a Wednesday because, as always, we're going to give you that big game breakdown. Now, on Tuesday's show, which was on CBS Sports Network, we did a deep dive into USC at Michigan, the Big Ten on CBS game this week. Also took a look at Friday night's ranked on ranked showdown in Lincoln between Illinois and Nebraska. Today, we start to pivot our attention outside of the Big Ten. We will look at Tennessee traveling to play Oklahoma, as well as a monster game in the Big 12 as Utah heads to Stillwater to face the Paddles and Oklahoma State, plus a lot more from across the board this week. For slate that has got the beginning of conference play and a lot of enticing matchups. We'll give you our keys to those coming up in just a little bit. But first, with some news that broke on late on Tuesday night, as look, we still haven't talked about some other conference realignment that has been going on. But what about conference realignment that might not be going on? Because multiple reports and our own research indicates that there is ongoing discussions between Clemson, Florida State, the Atlantic Coast Conference on revenue distribution. But before we get into the nitty gritty of this, if you could just like surface level, is this a path forward for Clemson and Florida State to remain in the ACC for the rest of this decade?
For the rest
of this decade, not for a decade, to round out the roaring 20s as a member of the ACC?
The devil is in the details, but I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
If the details are amenable to both sides, obviously. So if you recall, back at the 2023 spring meeting, so about 20 months ago, Florida State and Clemson were like, hey, if you want us to continue to carry the conference from a rating standpoint, continue to be nationally relevant, we need a certain amount of money that is equal to what the SEC and the Big Ten teams make, because that is our peers in terms of who we recruit against. And they wanted that to be tied to ratings. How much ratings do you bring in? Florida State and Clemson, I believe, they're like 35 or 40% of the ACC's ratings, right? But everybody gets an equal, whatever the number is. Like they have a chart that they contend. I'm sure the ACC has a different chart, but it is like they're worth more than like the bottom half of the conference put together in terms of ratings. So they wanted to be paid as such. This is something we have discussed that we think eventually will probably happen to other leagues, right? Like we've used does Ohio State going to continue to get the same amount as Indiana long term? Will Alabama?
I don't know the way things are going.
Well, sure. Like, will Bama continue to accept the same amount as Mississippi State or Vanderbilt? But when you are behind in revenue, as the ACC schools are, your issue is a little more pressing. So Clemson and Florida State proposed this like 20 months ago, and the ACC told them to kick rocks. But something has changed for the ACC to come back. And so Dellinger's report and CBS's report do not say who brought this up. ESPN claims that it was FSU and Clemson's proposal, which I think if in a very long-term reading of that, yes, because they're sort of like revisiting that initial proposal that we threw out like at this table 20 months ago. But from my understanding, this was the ACC coming to Florida State and Clemson with, hey, you want to revisit that thing that was thrown out there about 20 months ago?
What do you think spurned this conversation now? Because I know a lot of people want to dunk on Florida State, say, "Oh, they're 0-3. They have no, they have no leverage. They've lost everything. They're coming back." There's also, I think, what happened with the other conference realignment news that came out, that all of a sudden things look a little bit more unstable once again, with the Mountain West potentially having issues. The American potentially, adding Air Force. Like, there's just more news out there. What do you think precipitated, like right now, why we're getting it? Is just the reporting coming out?
So there's two separate questions there, right? Let's try to hit them both. The first is, why would this be offered up now? The other is, why would it be floated now? Like, what's the motivation behind the offer? What's the motivation behind the leak? I think first we should tackle the offer. this lawsuit is going better for Florida State than I thought it would. Some of the arguments that I thought were kind of specious and would be tossed out have not been tossed out. And you can follow a lot of people who are maybe more pro ACC. Obviously, I'm an FSU alum, so I'm biased in this. But if you follow like a lot of the legal analysis out there, it's like, wait, really? Like the judge is letting that go and letting that go. It's not a lot of this stuff that I think many folks anticipated, including some of my Florida State lawyer friends, thought would be tossed, has not been tossed. And so the odds that Florida State gets out and pays zero, like, hey, we are out scot-free. We own our rights right now. We're not going to have to cut some kind of big check to the ACC. I still believe remain very small. But like 7% is still better than 0.5%. And if there's been a material change in those odds, like the nuclear option odds, whoa, what if these big brands, what if they get out totally free? I think there are some schools in this league that would have to worry like, oh, crap. Carolina could go too. Miami could go too. And if you're Wake Forest, you would basically be valued on the market like an American Conference team. And they make about $9 million a year. And right now you make 44. So you have to sort of make a value judgment. You have to talk to your counsel and you have to say, man, what are the odds what are the odds Florida State and Clemson like straight up win? Like not a settlement in their favor. Like what are the odds they win? And I don't think those odds are great, but I do think they have increased from like super, super, super tiny to just a little bit less tiny than that, right? In recent weeks. So if you're able to sort of reintroduce that proposal, maybe it's a little bit sweetened because you have less leverage now than you did 20 months ago. And you've been in mediation, which is court ordered. I think that is as far as like the why.
Yeah, the timeline is because we're like a month separated from when they were, in the court ordered mediation. So
Correct.
It's like, and I know, Bud, you and I talked about this.
That's when it came up, what I was told. It was during mediation.
Yeah, and you've got, just in terms of university business and getting the university presidents to talk about this stuff, you kind of spend some time before the school year starts walking away from stuff. And then once everybody gets all the kids back on campus, university business starts back up, and so does conference business when it comes to these meetings. All these meetings where the ACC presidents are discussing this were all previously scheduled. None of this is emergency. This is just what has come up, and now these university presidents are letting the media know. I mean, do you think this is trial balloon? Because to me, I'm not even ready to say this is going to be the answer. To me, this feels very trial balloon.
Totally. Like, I know that Florida State wants to get to 80, which is like 40 million more. I'm very confident in what my sources tell me on that. Do I think they'll get to 80, which is roughly like what the SEC schools are going to be making pretty soon? I don't know about that. But again, it just comes down to what do you think your chances are to win at trial on both sides? And what are you willing to do as far as taking a haircut? Because how this would work, the mechanics of it, are that everybody would take slightly less revenue as far as guaranteed revenue. It would all go into a ratings pot. You would have to basically have some concession for basketball because basketball does represent some value to the league, right? It's probably like 80-20 football, but you can argue it more. You could go 85-15, you could go 64, whatever you want to do there. But allowing for the good basketball teams who pull good basketball ratings to also share in this likely secures you votes. And you're going to need 12 out of 18 teams, because Notre Dame gets a vote in this as well, to vote for the proposal. Obviously, if it's sweet enough, Florida State and Clemson would vote yes. I have no idea how the Irish would vote. You can argue it both ways as to who would vote for this and who wouldn't. But yeah, they would go into a ratings pool based on how your ratings would do, would be what you pull. I mean, for instance, Florida State is a terrible team this year. They're 0-3. They just played a group of 5 team, and they still pulled almost 2 million viewers, which is ridiculous, right? For that profile of a game. So that would keep Florida State and Clemson happy.
Which, by the way, Saturday night, it's just like a quick boom. Saturday night, when I was cracking jokes about those ratings charts and the value charts, it's because it's funny. I'd never have doubted Florida State's brand value or their television ratings. Anytime they play a team with a pulse, it is on one of the largest stages that television executives can put you on. A recent assessment of like the last 5 years of those ABC ACC games, basically every single one of them involves Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, And I think there's like a fifth one in there, but it's like that. I am not doing that. I am saying it's funny that the team that gets the most eyeballs is tripping over itself. That's all. That's all I'm saying. I'm not questioning the veracity of your charts.
I don't think anybody is questioning your veracity on that, are they?
Yeah.
Oh,
if you get the show,
the realignment account is very upset with Chip. Chip doesn't understand football if he doesn't understand television.
Realignment account.
He's got a bad football mind.
Yeah, realignment Twitter came after me, just because I was having some fun. Heaven forbid we have fun during the season.
I feel like I'm going to be like re-exposed to Twitter when Twitter finally kills like the old school TweetDeck hack. But like I still experience Twitter via old school TweetDeck. So like I'm just not seeing stuff that I don't want to see.
What I don't understand, like if it's a trial balloon, who's the trial balloon for? If this was first broached at the mediation,
I think it's a way to
presidents.
Well, yeah, on both sides.
Why wouldn't you just approach them?
Because their university presidents need to feel things out. See, like they don't want to make a decision that makes anybody mad. They need to. They need to see.
But why wouldn't you just talk to them about it? Why do you have to leak it?
This is interesting. So are you leaking it to try to gauge public sentiment? Are you leaking it to try to put pressure on other university presidents? Are you leaking it to try to put pressure on Florida State and Clemson to say yes to this? Right? Because it is crafty that you're like, hey, this is basically the proposal that you all threw out 2 years ago. Do you no longer want to agree to that proposal? It's also a way to take the temperature of how Florida State and Clemson truly feel about their chances of winning at trial.
There's, like you said, they want 80 million. There's
Correct.
no way they're going to get that.
So if everybody takes a 20% haircut, right, you would go from 44 to like 35. That is still 4 times what you would make as an American team. That's kind of the calculus if you're like a Wake or a Syracuse. Or
but what leverage does Florida State have to get that?
It's
the Big Ten hasn't offered you a spot. The SEC hasn't offered you a spot. How are you going to say we want 80?
Yeah, but Tom, like, do you really think that it? So implied in the you would have to take a crazy haircut down to 8 or 9 million is that those schools have walked with their rights free and clear, at which point they would certainly have a spot.
But if Florida State is considering doing this, that is an admission that they don't have that option available to them.
That is not true.
If Florida State could join the Big Ten, why would they take this deal?
It's all likelihoods of winning or losing, right? Let's say there's a 60% chance that they win at trial, which I think is way too high, right? But as far as like an outright win at trial, in that case, they would have their rights free and clear, and they would be able to walk to the Big Ten. Then you get the additional calculus. What kind of share would you get in the Big Ten starting out? I don't think they would get a full share, personally. I think people who think that are kind of nuts, right? So it's basically all just formulaic. What's your percentage chance you win outright at trial and get your rights? You don't have to pay any kind of exit fee. Okay, then you have your rights. You go to the Big Ten. They pay you X. So in this time period, you're making Y. Then the next calculus is, what's the chance you get out, but you actually have to pay a substantial exit fee? What is the cost to finance that exit fee if you want? Again, same calculus comes back. What is your share from the Big Ten now that you have your rights?
Hold on. How much does Florida State get now annually in its current deal?
Like 44.
What do you think the percentage chance that they get free and clear of this via the lawsuit is?
Like 5%.
So they're making 44 million now. You think they've got a 5% chance of getting out of this deal without having to pay anything. And you think they're going to be able to tell the ACC, we want you to double what you're giving us when they don't have another landing spot, and that the landing spot they currently might have wouldn't give them the same full share they're giving everybody else? What leverage gives them that option? There is no way in hell they're going to get 80 million a year.
Well, 2 things here. One, I reject the premise they don't have a landing spot if they have their rights free and clear. I think that's silly to even contemplate that.
But you just said there's only a 5% chance they get their free and clear.
No. Free and clear, meaning you don't have to pay for it.
But you just said there's only a 5% chance of that happening.
Correct, but there's also the chance that they pay a settlement and do have their rights.
5% of 44 million, then plus the 60 million you'd get from the Big Ten.
That's not how the math works on that, though. Right? Like you're not hitting.
Where are you going to get 80 million? If something has a 5% chance of happening, I'm not going to agree to double what I'm giving you.
You didn't really let me finish on this. Okay. The 5%. Sure.
But no, the math is still the math.
Can I finish?
Yes.
All right. So the 5% is I mean, we're just using made up numbers here, but that's you winning completely a trial, not winning your rights back. That's winning and paying nothing. Okay. There's a far greater chance that you win the settlement, you get your rights free and clear, you pay some amount as an exit fee to leave. The worry for the other ACC schools is the destabilizing effect that would have on the league. The less Florida State has to pay to get out, and that would include the zero, but also like the non-zero number, right, that they would have to pay for an exit fee, the greater odds that other schools leave as well, which there are certain schools out there that would have to take like an 80% cut if a majority of the league was going to leave, because they would not have a home that would pay them any sort of significant revenue, right? So for them, it's sort of a risk assessment. What are the true, like, what is their counsel telling them about Florida State and Clemson actually winning at trial outright? What is their counsel telling them about what a likely settlement, if Florida State was going to leave, would look like? And what would it cost us to have stability for the next 5 years, at which point probably all this stuff blows up anyway, and maybe we don't even have conferences by 2031.
These are all great what ifs. But if the number you suggest that there's a 5% chance that they can get out of this free and clear, why am I settling if I'm the ACC? I've got the same chance of survival basically either way. They're either going to get out free and clear, or I'm going to settle to let them go. And then I'm in the same boat I would be if that 5% hits, but I've got a little extra spending cash.
So if the 5% hits, you get no extra spending cash.
Yeah.
I think there's a far greater chance, like maybe 50 or 60%, that they get a pretty decent deal to walk, and then they pay out that, right? I think that's what you're missing. The 5% is like the GOR is invalidated, Florida State and Clemson walk paying nothing. There's a much greater chance that they have to pay something, right? And that
what's the something? I mean, like, I know this is impossible to answer, but I'm just saying by your estimation.
Let's call it 125. Pre-trial, I would have called it like 250. That's still a lot. That goes into your risk assessment here. You see what I'm saying?
I think I would call the bluff, honestly.
So why are you revisiting the proposal if you guys, like, if the ACC was very much like, shove it 20 months ago? Something's changed in their risk assessment.
Well, we don't know who's floating this trial balloon.
Why would they even have discussions on it?
Why would the ACC float it when they could just talk to the other presidents?
Okay, float it to the media, sure, but like, why would you reintroduce this idea that you shot down 20 months ago?
Do we know for a fact they reintroduced it, or was this part of the mediation?
They reintroduced it during mediation. That's what I'm saying.
We know that they did it, though.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. It just doesn't make sense to me on the ACC's part.
It suggests to me that they feel like they have less leverage than they once did. How much leverage, how much less is, that's kind of incalculable, right?
Yeah, but I feel like you're giving Florida State and Clemson way too much leverage here, because I don't think they have it.
Well, I think we can debate who has more leverage. I would be surprised if you could argue that they have less leverage than they did prior.
That's true, but if you only had 5% and now it's up to 7%, is it really? I don't know. It's just I don't see a situation, because again, I won't be shocked if Florida State ends up in the Big Ten at some point down the line. I think that's far more likely that they end up somewhere, whether it's the Big Ten or whatever the hell the new landscape of college football is. But I don't think the Big Ten's dying to add them right now. So if I'm the ACC, I might just say, stick it out and see what happens.
Didn't you guys think
I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's a coincidence that if it is the ACC floating this, that they're floating it after Florida State's gotten off to a terrible start.
One thing I think is interesting. Morgan in the
chat.
Start
on the field, not start in the courtroom, right?
Correct. On the field. I think maybe if it's the ACC floating it, and we know that for sure, that could be related to the 0-3 start, because maybe they're thinking, Florida State might be a little desperate now.
Morgan in the chat, I thought, put up a good point. If FSU loses, they're stuck in the ACC. If the ACC loses, they potentially die. I think that's very real. I think that's a good one. I also thought one of the things that was in all this news that we got was the fact that this is only through 2030. Like in the way Chip's question was proposed. I think that's probably the most interesting, where it's like, oh, I haven't heard that aspect, because we've heard about this. Bud mentioned the at Amelia Island a year and a half ago or whenever it was, when they first started floating some of these unequal revenue shares, no one's ever taught. Everyone's always been 2036, 2036, 2036. And what is interesting is those are the 2030 is the same year that the Big 10 and Big 12 deals expire. That to me was sort of the new news that we got, that somebody's willing to potentially, shorten the deal that feels like it's a jail sentence for Florida State and Clemson.
We have no idea how any of this is going to go.
And there you have it.
That's very true.
I mean,
the Florida State.
I think if you're Florida State, if you're Florida State, I think you should take the deal. If the deal is what has been floated. Again, we have no idea.
All
right, you want 80, but what will you settle for?
That's the thing. And
would you take 70?
Would you take 60?
I don't think they would take 60. I think they would fight that out at trial.
Maybe 65. I don't. But there's a point to it though, that especially with the 2030, where if you're Florida State, you're just thinking, man, how do we stay competitive with Ohio State, Bama, Big 10 schools, SEC schools? How do we compete with them? Yes, we can manage some slight deficit. We can get our boosters to kick in. Maybe we do some other creative ideas to create revenue. And then all of a sudden it's only till 2030. Yeah, we can make that work. I think that's where the discussions are being had right now. And I think it's really interesting because I don't know what that number is, but maybe it's halfway, and maybe that's the ACC's, maybe that's their point. It's we can get you to 60. We're not getting you to 80. And I think that's probably the discussion that Florida State and Clemson are having, is what's manageable for us until 2030.
What does the Big 10 bring in?
I don't know. It's
80
like
next year?
Something to 80, yeah.
75, 80?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
I mean,
it's hard to remember because everybody's getting a different share right now.
Sure. So, if you're taking a half share for your first, let's say somehow Florida State got out and had to pay a settlement number, not the free and clear option, but they own their rights free and clear, but they had to pay to get them. If you're having to take a half share in the Big 10 for 2 or 3 years, there's a very real possibility that you would make more by staying in the ACC and taking this new deal up until 2030. And I think Danny's correct that this being 2030 and not 2036 is pretty important, because that's probably the next round of alignment, and you don't want to be realignment, excuse me. You don't want to be locked in to let them pass you yet again, right? I think
how's your story coming? Chip, how's your story coming?
Oh no, I was just reading the chat. Yeah, I was hanging out in the tailgate. I can't read the chat.
Chip went and took out the garbage. I'll be back, guys. You just keep going.
I pulled into spot 308. I was just I was hanging out with the tailgate, man. I was curious if Virginia should be a favorite on the road against Coastal Carolina. I was curious.
They both look bad this weekend.
Yeah, I was hanging out in the tailgate. Just hearing, just looking at the conversation. It's a lot of conjecture.
We also, how much does North Carolina want per year to stay?
I don't care. I don't care. I tell you what, on September 18th, I don't care. They'll figure it out, and they'll fight, and they'll be winners, and they'll be losers. And I don't want to play realignment fan fiction right now.
All right. Did we hit 8 minutes?
Buddy, we hit 20.
24.
All right. Great VOD. Cut it, ship it. Let's talk some ball.
Coming up on the other side, taking a look at some of the biggest matchups on the field this weekend. It is Big Game Breakdown. Next.
A Quiet Place Day 1 is now streaming on Paramount Plus. It's thrilling, terrifying. It will make your heart pound out of your chest. A Quiet Place Day 1, now streaming.
Back here on the Cover 30 podcast every single Wednesday, we like to take you inside a matchup. Locks is where you get the best bets. But if you want real context, if you want analysis on how these games are going to be decided, we got to give it to you in Big Game Breakdown. there's so much packed into Tennessee's visit to Oklahoma. It is the Oklahoma Sooners SEC opener. They've got it at home. They've got it at night. It is Josh Heupel returning to Oklahoma 10 years to the season from when Bob Stoops decided to let him go, and then the following year hire Lincoln Riley. We have a Tennessee team that looks like an absolute monster. We have an Oklahoma team that certainly is imperfect, though 3-0 in the standings. And all of it's going to come colliding on Saturday night. We were off field for a lot of minutes, so let's start on field before we get to the Josh Heupel revenge factor. Danny, what do you think Tennessee can do the best against Oklahoma?
I know a lot of this is going to be about Nico and Josh Heupel and that offense, but I think the biggest advantage they have is probably their defense against Oklahoma's offense.
I agree.
Like Jackson Arnold has not looked comfortable yet for the Sooners. They've been a little bit banged up. They have not clicked. And Tennessee has they got dudes on the defensive line that can absolutely get after a quarterback. That to me is the biggest edge in this game.
So one thing that stands out to me about the defense is that the offenses that Tennessee has played are not intimidating. But where's Oklahoma? Like, Oklahoma will be the best offense that Tennessee has faced, but by how many? By how many tiers based on Oklahoma? Like, raw talent, top end talent, sure. I mean, you got Jackson Arnold, you got Deion Burks, but in terms of like 1 through 11, the way that they handled their business, like, is this enough of a jump up in competition that we should expect that Tennessee's defense is going to be anything other than really, really salty?
I mean, look, we don't necessarily know that Tennessee's secondary is all that improved. I mean, in NC State, McCall got injured against Louisiana Tech, but if he did not get injured, I think he was heading for a benching. He had played poorly in that ball game, and he had played poorly against NC State, and he had played poorly against Western Carolina. So they really have not faced a competent passing game yet. We don't actually know how good Tennessee's pass defense in terms of coverage is. I do think that we know that Tennessee, that their D-line is going to absolutely rip
against Oklahoma in this game.
NC State's offensive line has been disappointing, but so has Oklahoma's. And most of that, I think, is due to poor evaluation in the transfer portal and then injury, subsequent injury. So they've had sort of the double whammy. Florida State fans know that well this year. So Oklahoma's kind of got the same thing going on. And there's a reason Houston is abusing you, right? Like, Houston's got a nice defensive scheme. Shieldwood does a good job there, but that shouldn't happen. I mean, Tulane got some pressure. Temple sucks, but like, Temple got a little more pressure than I thought. I bet OU in that game. I had to sweat it, like, kind of, and thankfully Temple's offense is just like that bad. So, I mean, can they block Tennessee at all? I think they'll probably have to run Jackson Arnold a good bit in this game to even up the numbers in the run game, and then try to take some of your deep shots. I mean, short fields, turnovers created by Oklahoma's defense, which is really damn good, is going to be important here because I just don't know how many points Oklahoma can score. I will note, after screwing around with the helmet comms and stuff in week 1, I don't know if Venables got into that offensive meeting room and said, "Hey, like, y'all ain't that smart. You slowing down gives the DCs an opportunity to call stuff too, crank that tempo back up." But they have fully throttled that tempo back up in the last 2 weeks. So I would expect OU to try to go insane tempo, just like Tennessee is again.
I mean, I do think the key to this game will be Oklahoma's offensive line versus Tennessee's defensive front, because there's very much a lot of truth in the idea that Tennessee hasn't faced a good team yet. So it's hard to know how good the defense truly is and how legit some of these statistics are. But statistically, it's been pretty good.
It's been awesome.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, Oklahoma, it looks bad for Oklahoma, but as far as the entire country is concerned, it's not terrible. Like, they are 63rd in pressure rate allowed, and they are 61st in time to pressure. Again, not great. It's basically exactly middle of the road, but it's not like it's been awful. And to their credit, or to his credit, Jackson Arnold has done a very good job of getting rid of the ball quick. So he's, whether that's just because he's terrified, sometimes that's the case, sometimes it's just because he's getting rid of the ball because he's good at it. But what'll be remain to be seen is that this is a Tennessee team that on the other side of the ball ranks 7th nationally in time to pressure rate as far as getting to the quarterback. And what really stands out about that is Tennessee's not blitzing to get the pressure. They are just bringing 4 guys nearly 90% of the time, and they are still getting pressure. They rank 8th in pressure to blitz ratio, which is just a way of saying they can blitz, or they can get pressure without bringing extra bodies. So considering some of the struggles Oklahoma's offensive line has had in pass protection, that's something to worry about. Then I also think that Oklahoma is going to have to be able to run the ball a little bit. And I wonder if, for me, from what I have seen, and I have not broken all this down and studied it, but from what I have seen, the offensive line to me has been a bigger problem in their run game than pass protection. They haven't been good in either, but I worry more about their performance creating space in the run game. And I think that's going to be a problem, because if I'm facing Tennessee, like Bud, you're right, they have increased their tempo, but I need to stay on the field too. Like, I do not want to send my defense out there repeatedly to face this Tennessee offense, who can, just put up explosive plays and can move pretty quick on its own. It can also just wear you down. And one of the problems the Sooners have had is they've gone 3 and out on 41% of their offensive possessions.
Yeah.
That ranks 122nd. That is terrible for a team that is supposed to be that good. So your defense is getting worn down. Your offense is not getting any kind of confidence. It's not getting any kind of, momentum, whatever the hell you want to call it. So the offense needs to stay on the field. They need to be able to run the ball, and they need to be able to protect Jackson Arnold. If they can do all of those things, which is asking a lot, this is a game that they can win, and they can beat Tennessee. They are home. It's not like the Sooners suck. They're just not elite. And you look at this Tennessee side, like, they do seem to be pretty damn elite, particularly on offense. And again, the schedule been very light, but they have decimated teams. They have scored on 76.3 of their possessions. That is the highest in the country by far. Their negative play rate of 19.8% ranks 7th nationally. The one area that you can get them is, as good as they have been, they have turned the ball over a little bit. And right now, Oklahoma currently ranks 8th in the country in defensive turnover rate at turning teams over. So that is the one thing. So if I'm putting together a recipe for the Sooners to pull off this upset at home, contain big plays on defense, because Tennessee can get them either way. They're particularly in the run game. They have been just explosive after explosive after explosive. Protect Arnold, force turnovers, and stay on the damn field. That's how Oklahoma wins this game. Can they do it? I don't know.
Which of these numbers seems more incorrect to you, or more correct, whichever one you want? Oklahoma 24.5 points, Tennessee 33.5 points. Those are the current team totals in Vegas for this game.
33.5.
Meaning you think it's too low?
Yes. I also think the other one's a little too high.
If Tennessee gets over 30, I think they win the game like 90% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
If for Oklahoma to win this game, I think they need to really just have a defensive effort for the ages, which they might. Like, that's a really damn good defense. To me, they're a lot more athletic than NC State is. Like, NC State is a well-coached defense. NC State to me does not have dudes, like next level difference makers. The corners are good, but everybody else is just kind of whatever. So Oklahoma has a lot better players. I think they can run with Tennessee more. I think Venables will have an awesome game plan, and I do think the home field's going to matter here quite a bit. Like, if you're just betting like straight power numbers and giving like the normal 2 for home field, I think you're doing it wrong in this game. I think you need to be using, like, they're going to be crazy jacked up for this. Like, the first SEC ball game ever. This is the biggest home game for Oklahoma since when?
When did
Maybe
Notre
when
Dame
Ohio
come to
State came
town,
in?
or Ohio State? Which one was more recent?
And this is probably bigger. It's like it's your conference opener with a new league.
Right. Yeah.
Like, they don't get good games at home. Like, their Texas game is always a neutral site. Like, everybody who comes there, unless it's a non-conference game, it's not a draw. So I think the home field is going to matter an awful lot. Like, we haven't seen Tennessee deal with pressure all that much. But I think Tennessee will have a good plan. I mean,
Mhm.
their use of the tight ends against NC State was a surprise. I think to me, to NC State, to everybody, and that worked out really well.
Also, this is like Nico's first real road start
Yeah.
in like a bad play. Like they played NC State and Charlotte, but the neutral site, and it wasn't exactly like those games are never really any that you're like worried about a QB dealing with the noise. You're going to have to deal with the noise in this one. So there's a definitely possibility young QB could make mistakes. Like I said, there have been turnovers. Like he's thrown some bad throws against NC State. He threw a couple bad picks. If you can get him into doing that by pressuring him or just kind of confusing him, you can keep yourself in the game. So it's like the concern I have if I'm Oklahoma is based on what I have seen. I feel like I have to play a perfect game to win, whereas Tennessee could play a less than perfect game and still win.
I think I agree.
What about Samson? I mean, like, you want to talk about numbers that are funny. Hey, Nico only throws it about 22 times a game. Now they're always blowouts, so there's no need for him to go out there. But like Nico, this superstar, and I'm not saying that he is not living up to the billing. I'm just saying they haven't even like truly unlocked or asked him to dominate this game. Dylan Sampson's got a profile of one of the best running backs in America. I got 9 touchdowns on the year. Like I could see this being a spot where if Tennessee can run the ball effectively with Dylan Sampson, you take the pressure off your young quarterback, you take the crowd out of the game, and while they're playing at like a blitzing pace, you at least are able to, if they are able to run the ball effectively, you are putting a lot more pressure on that Oklahoma defense to be able, which I agree with you, Bud, like it is very different in terms of the athleticism of the players out there, but that you are asking them to win the game to begin with. You are always dealing with the threat of what Nico Iamaleava can do. If you can't force them into those 3rd and long, Nico, go make a play against this rowdy crowd and our nasty defense and whatever Brent's got cooked up from this week of grinding tape, then it's going to be night if Tennessee can run the ball well.
Preseason, we regarded this Oklahoma receiving core as good as any in the Big 12, or sorry, in the SEC, right? Burks, Anderson, Farouk, Gibson, like that's a nasty foursome. Now it's just Burks, right?
Right.
And what is it? Anderson? Sorry, the names are jumbled up in my head, but one of the guys is trying to get back and be 100%. But we know it's not Gibson. And the tight ends have not been as good as I think that they had hoped they would be. You would read a lot in the offseason about how the tight ends are going to be more involved, but they have not really been difference makers. So they're just banged up.
Yeah, to your point, Deion Burks has caught 22 passes. No other Oklahoma receiver has caught more than 6. Like Bauer Sharp is second on the team with 10, and he's the tight end. Like it is pretty much a one-man show at receiver right now, which was not expected coming into the year. And I think the other thing we learn about this game or from this game is how much Brent Venables trusts his secondary, because like you mentioned, Chip, Dylan Sampson's been running all over, but he's also been facing a lot of light boxes because defenses are terrified. They don't want to put extra guys in the box because then Tennessee will kill you. So is he going to leave his guys on an island? Is he going to put more guys in the box to try to stop that run, to keep them from doing that? Because, you think of them, that veer and shoot, you kind of think of it as an air raid, but the truth is it's all kind of based off the run game. Like everything they do is running the ball, and then they get tons of explosives in the passing game. So it'll be interesting. Does he dial up extra pressure? Does he bring more blitzes? You're going to find out a lot about what they actually think of their defense in this game.
What's really interesting too is the pace of this game, because I think Venables clearly wants to try to confuse Nico. You want to try to mix things up, but when they're coming so fast, it's really hard to do that. Like all of a sudden you don't have, and I know you have headsets too, but it just gets a little bit more complex to try to get the blitzes that you want, the looks that you want, to disguise, to do all those things. It's why teams go no huddle. It's why they go fast, because you figure out, bam, that's their base call or that's their check. If they don't know and they can't get a signal in or they can't get the call in, and then all of a sudden you can be exposed in a really tough spot. That to me is going to be really fascinating. I will point out, just because those numbers Tom pointed out were spectacular for Tennessee. Chattanooga is 0-3. Kent State is 0-3. They're a 49.5-point underdog to Penn State. And NC State, I don't think is anywhere as good as a lot of us thought they could be.
Mhm.
So, but we're like, this is the best part about this part of the season is we find out what teams really are. And I still think Nico's really good, and I still think Tennessee is really good. But I do think the environment, although I will say this, I don't know who's like Tennessee, are they more confident than Oklahoma is as less confident? Like Oklahoma fans, it feels to me are like, oh, I hope we don't get embarrassed. I don't think that they're even kind of down.
Come kickoff time, that place will be like you.
Oh, they'll be loud.
Yeah, it'll be
there's a nervous
intoxicating.
energy about the Sooner fan base that's kind of like, hey, okay, this is the SEC. This is what we signed up for, right?
Okay. Well, part of that too might be that who are the biggest twist the knife coaches in college football? Like the guys
Heupel.
who know the number. James Franklin and Josh Heupel.
Lane Kiffin too.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they can cover for the boosters, they will. So I don't think Tennessee lets off the throttle here if they get up.
I mean, if they're kicking on sides at 30-0 against Kent State, they're definitely going to do whatever it takes.
Dude.
I mean, they could be up by 4 touchdowns. They might pull out a fake punt. I mean, you just don't know.
The opponent is nameless, is faceless speech is just, I mean, that there is a level of, how about this, Danny, to answer your question, there's a level of confidence. I don't know about the fan base. The confidence level in Tennessee's locker room seems like it's sky high. Like, I don't know. And, it was like I told you on CBS Sports HQ yesterday, both of these teams have not trailed for a single second of the season. And yet everything looks hard for one of them and everything looks easy for the other. And while Tennessee's had one of the most manageable strength of schedules possible, it's not like Oklahoma has been playing down and things have looked difficult. And so I totally understand why there might be that different level in the juice going into this game.
It's crazy how the head coach who used to be a quarterback just wants to score every time he has the ball. Who would expect that kind of mentality from a QB?
Okay. One last piece here. We think Heupel wants this like as badly as any game?
Yeah.
Like, maybe more than like what would you rather do? Beat Oklahoma and Norman or win an SEC championship?
I mean, you can still get to the playoffs, so you would trade. You got the win over OU. Like, and we get a bye week going into the playoff and a home game. Heck yeah, you'd trade that in a heartbeat.
I mean,
and
you probably can't do one without the other.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right. And then like Brent actually he admitted he came out today and retold the story about how he didn't want to recruit Josh Heupel. But then he followed it up with oh man, I'm sure glad we did. Look at what, we accomplished. But also Brent, what about that first part where you didn't want to recruit Josh Heupel? Okay.
Also,
well, Kaylee Smith was pretty good too. So
I'm
pick.
put myself in Josh Heupel's shoes. All right. And I took that personally, so on and so forth. All right. Any other thoughts on this game? I'm sure we'll continue to discuss it from the wagering perspective on Thursday's Locks episode. Anything?
Didn't Bob Stoops demote Brent Venables so that he could make his brother the D coordinator in a disastrous decision that probably cost him a national title?
Which season was
I would ask Bob, but he's not taking questions this week.
Yeah.
Bob, I mean, Bob Stoops fired Josh Heupel, but he also demoted Venables, which allowed Clemson to get Venables when Steele had the issue and they allowed 70 points to West Virginia in the Orange Bowl in 2011.
Yeah,
okay.
2011 season.
Maybe we've been doing this a long time.
Josh and Brent just meeting at midfield complaining about Bob.
Venables kind of got to be like, hey, bro. He kind of fired me, pseudo fired me too, right? Like Josh, you're not the only one here who was done wrong.
Yeah. We will have much more on this coming up on the other side. One of the games in the year in the Big 12. We'll get into all that, plus some additional USC Michigan, if we got any notes on that, and more of analysis of the Week 4 slate. Next. Saturday at 3:30 Eastern on CBS. It's big time at the Big House when 11th ranked USC makes a trip to Ann Arbor to face 18th ranked Michigan. We'll get you set for kickoff beginning at 2:30 Eastern with college football kickoff, followed by college football today. That's all coming up on Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Love when Chip goes to the big game voice.
Hey, listen, I have spent years as a stadium and a stadium PA
announcer?
guy. Yeah. And like PA in the gym for all the like, there's a high school basketball showcase. Now it's called the John Wall Invitational, but it used to be like the GlaxoSmithKline Invitational. High school teams from all over the state and the region come. And so you just go and you'd call you do the PA for like 6 basketball games in a day. Just keep it rocking and rolling. Do all your ad reads for medical sales. All right. So, Tom, can we trust Kyle Whittingham?
Absolutely not.
No, I don't know that Cam Rising is even alive at this point. Honestly, he might have got a staph infection and died from whatever happened to his finger. Who knows? I will, or at least for the sake of this segment, I am just assuming Cam Rising will play. Everybody else the same?
That's what the
Way
odds
too
makers
much
think.
money has been bet on this game to move it. Like they opened a 3-point dog, and now they're what, a 2-point favorite. Somebody would know and would have bet this back if Cam Rising is not playing. Because if Cam Rising is not playing, that's probably like actually a touchdown drop off to Wilson, and then Oklahoma State should be, favored by more than a field goal. Like I do think at this point somebody would have bribed a trainer enough to know and got the right answer that he's not playing. I know that, I think that for a big game like that, I bet you that kind of stuff happens. So I think he's playing.
So
is he 100%? That I don't know.
Ironically, I'm more confident in Cam Rising playing in this game than I am of what to make of Utah. Because I do feel like when you look at who they've played and then blend in the fact that Cam got hurt early in the Baylor game and missed last week, like the offense they got off really hot in that game against Baylor. Cam gets hurt, leaves the game, and then they look like crap for the rest of the day. But that's not totally unexpected, because when you bring in a backup unexpectedly because things are going wrong, it's fair to expect that there will be some problems. Last week against Utah State, the offense looked good again without Cam, but Utah State also got torn apart by USC. So there's very much a chance that defense just sucks and we can't really take anything from it. So for me approaching this game, I kind of looked at it more from the Oklahoma State side, because I feel like, the line has moved. They're now underdogs at home in a conference game. And this is a conference game, right? We're not doing that anymore.
We're done with that. Yeah.
Just making sure. Can Oklahoma State run the football? Because to this point, Utah defensively has not looked spectacular against the run. And Ollie Gordon is tied for 3rd nationally with 62 rush attempts. And that would be great for him to be the same kind of workhorse he was last year if he was having the same kind of production as he was last year, but he's not.
Yeah.
He's averaging 3.5 yards per carry, which ranks 225th among qualified running backs out there. He's got an explosive run rate of 3.2%, which ranks 312th of qualified running backs out there. And it's just not good. But to his defense, it's not really his fault. The offensive line sucks. Like he is getting, let's see, what's the number at? Oklahoma State ranks 124th nationally in yards allowed before contact at 0.91. Ollie's getting 2.5 yards after contact, which isn't great in a vacuum. But when you consider how early he's being hit, the fact that he's still able to get those yards tends to give me reason to believe that he's still a good player. He's just getting absolutely no help. Overall, you'll be shocked to learn that because of all these problems, Oklahoma State ranks 110th nationally in EPA per rush. So it's hard for me to think they're going to win this game without figuring out a way to run the football, because based on what we have seen, and again, it's hard to know what to take seriously from Utah statistically based on who they've played, but their pass defense has been very good and their rush defense has been pretty So based off of that, and based off of just the way Oklahoma State has played, I think Ollie Gordon and this rushing attack really need to have a good day if they're going to win this game.
I agree with you, but I'm also a little curious. Like, is that the right approach against Utah because Utah's secondary has been a little underwhelming to me. Now, they totally shut down Baylor. I mean, that was a dominant performance until Rising got hurt. But like last week, the ball got thrown around on them a little bit. And we do know from our summer school series, they were pretty high on Keenan Johnson, the corner who transferred from Georgia Tech. And now he's out for the year. So maybe they have some more secondary concerns now than they did in the preseason. I think these Oklahoma State receivers are pretty darn good. Although I think it's got to be kind of schemed up for Bowman. I mean, he's not a difference maker in terms of making things happen. Like it's Gundy's going to have to be very much in his bag. And on the flip side, as I'm sure Dan's going to talk about, like Oklahoma State's defense has been bad. I mean, Arkansas almost had 700 yards on them. Like that's inexcusable. Shutting down Tulsa. I don't know if you guys watched that game. I watched just some clips. Tulsa's offensive line looks like high schoolers. So that doesn't really sway my opinion of this Oklahoma State defense. I don't know how many stops you're going to get if Rising is right.
With all that Oklahoma State had coming back, the offensive line, which had a zillion starts combined, Ollie Gordon, incredible workhorse. The reason I was not high on him was because I thought Alan Bowman was just a dude, just a guy, right? He's a jag. And he's played a little bit better this year. He's taking care of the football, but I think defenses and every defensive coordinator is like, we're not going to let Ollie Gordon beat us. Good luck with Alan Bowman trying to do it through the air. Which is why I think he's putting up better numbers. He looks a little more comfortable because you're getting much better matchups on the outside, but I don't think that'll change. I think Utah will challenge Ollie Gordon just the same way, and they'll say, all right, even if we have issues in the secondary, make the throws to beat us.
Who has the coaching edge?
Both have very good coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like if you want to really, I don't think anybody has a huge edge.
2 of the top 4 coaches in the Big 12?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe 2 of the top 3?
Might be 2 of the
And
top
the head
2.
coach in waiting on defense for Utah. I'd say that maybe the D coordinators give the slight edge to Utah, just the consistency with which they've been good on defense. But as far as like coaching overall, these are 2 great coaches. I mean, they're 2 of the longest tenured. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And I know they've got ties to both schools and all that, but these are 2 phenomenal coaches. I'll be curious, the Cam Rising thing. So Dorian Singer talks to the media, says he's playing. Everybody buys into it. I mean, it would be the biggest rope-a-dope ever if somebody told him, hey, tell him he's playing and he's not. I just think by all accounts, it was stitches, right? Like he cut his hand. It's nothing more significant than that, right?
Yeah, I had read a cut. I don't know where I read that. Apologies, but
laceration was the word that was out.
So the only thing I wish I knew, and maybe if they had this in the pregame, I would check it out. Like, where is the laceration? Is it behind your hand or is it on the underneath? Because there is a massive difference from grip on the football. And like, if he has to tape it, that does kind of make you a little bit more erratic. Like all your touch points on the underneath of your hand are what need to be good to go. Other than that, I would expect Cam Rising to be completely fine. But like if they show, if they have him in warmups and they do that super zoomed in close up of his hand and they show it, it's either heavily wrapped or there's something underneath, then I might be a little bit more worried about Utah.
Let's go bloody sock.
State,
Let's go a bloody sock or a bloody glove. Like I want to get that he's playing through the pain.
Yes. Utah, though, they do love that 12 personnel. They love to get the tight ends involved. We've seen Oklahoma State's secondary struggle against Arkansas. Bud was talking about that. I do wonder if like Utah's offensive attack almost is better for Oklahoma State matchup wise.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm very excited. I mean, there's I don't want to of course I want to go down Vibes Land. I don't want to go too far down Vibes Land away from the matchup, but just on a simple principle that Oklahoma State's entire Big 12 title candidacy is happening right now. They get Utah, then they've got to go to Kansas State. I think that coaching staff knows it. Mike Gundy talked about it. There is what Mike Gundy said. He's friends. He said the commissioner, who's a buddy of mine, he's not in charge of the scheduling. So I should have sent my Christmas present to the scheduling guys instead. they are intimately aware that if they're going to compete for a Big 12 title, they need to be playing their best football against the other good teams in this conference right now. So I look at this as very much a put up or shut up. Like, no one's going to remember if Oklahoma State's playing its best football of the season in mid-November in the games where they should win, because you're not going to be playing for the Big 12 title. So let's see what you got.
It does appear to be like
Saturday.
Like the race for the Big 12 appears to be tightening a little bit. Right? Like, I mean,
well, we've kicked Kansas out.
So if I told you Utah, Kansas State, UCF, Oklahoma State, Iowa State are the only 5 teams that have a real shot to make the Big 12 title game, are you pushing back on that? And if so, who?
Do you believe?
I mean, Kansas doesn't have any conference losses, and Kansas does have a real easy schedule. And I think it's probably dumb to count out a Lance Leipold team this early when the guy's track record of coaching is amazing. And they have a super easy schedule, if I recall. So maybe that would be it.
Based off of the conference title odds at FanDuel Make Every Moment More, there are 5 teams that they consider to be actual contenders for this league: Utah, Kansas State, UCF, Oklahoma State, and Iowa State. After that, there is a large gap to the next team, which is West Virginia.
Iowa State is interesting. I was doing my prep for this week, and they are in that category of, but what do we actually know? They're playing Arkansas State this week, so we're going to go into week 5, but what do we actually know? You know, we feel like we're getting these good data points about all these other teams, understanding, they get tested, they face some adversity. We sort of figure out what their counterpunch is. Iowa State played North Dakota. They had the tremendous second half comeback against Iowa, and that's all we've got. So Iowa State could be at the top of that list. Iowa State could be 5th. I've got no clue. And so it'll be interesting to be able to check it out. Tom. Oh, does Danny have to run?
Yeah, we booted him like we booted Kansas from the Big 12 title contention.
You can get out.
Get out of here.
Okay, all right. All right.
Oh, now he's back.
I
Kansas is back.
No, I accidentally just clicked off the tab. I was going to look at a different tab and just, I was like, oh, crap. What did I just do? I do have a tea time in a half hour, so let's speed this baby up.
It's like, what, a 5-minute walk from your office?
All right, Tom, what other if any other matchups you want to turn our attention to? We've already done full big game breakdowns for Nebraska, Illinois, for USC, Michigan. If you got any other USC, Michigan thoughts, definitely feel free to offer them. Oklahoma State, Utah, and of course, Tennessee, Oklahoma. What else has got your eye?
I mean, I kind of have an interest in the Clemson NC State game, just because, we've got the QB change with NC State, with McCall going down. Last we saw Clemson a couple weeks ago against App State, it was very, very impressive. Can they continue that momentum against NC State? Does a quarterback change actually change our outlook on NC State going forward? Because right now, my outlook on the Wolfpack is not extremely high. Like, I feel like this is a team that would probably get to a bowl game still, but I don't know how much higher your expectations should be. So it's going to be a very interesting game, I think, because, Clemson looked great against App State, but it was App State. Let's see how they look against an actual conference team, and can NC State change the trajectory of its season? So for me, it's one of those games that might not be the preeminent matchup of the weekend, but I think it's going to be very interesting to watch.
Is that a one-way read game for you? Meaning, if Clemson does not win this game, I don't know that I would actually change my opinion on NC State. I'd have to watch the ball game, but I think I would really just drastically change my opinion on what Clemson is.
I think drastically Clemson is the one whose opinion can change a lot. I think if NC State is impressive in this game and at least hangs around or pulls off the upset, then all right, this team, it doesn't stink. But if Clemson is able to kind of blow the doors off of them too, the same way that they blew the doors off of App State, I kind of not throw away, but I get rid of a lot of the Georgia game from my thoughts on this team.
So the interesting thing about Bailey for NC State, I do think he has ability. He was throwing
to Jeremiah Smith
and JoJo Trader.
Yeah.
And another 4-star as well. I mean, that is the best receiving core I've seen in a high school team. And I don't think there's a close second ever. I mean, they had Jeremiah Smith and JoJo Trader, who kills it for Miami in practice, and yet another stud too to throw to on the same high school team. So he does not have a whole lot of experience throwing into tight windows, given that Big Ten teams can't cover Jeremiah Smith. High school teams could not either.
Counterpoint, and shout out to my guy Joe Chilio on this one. When you're playing for Chaminade with that kind of talent, if you're a quarterback and you can't play, they'll get your ass out of there.
This is true.
So, like, this could be higher standard. Like, you want to talk about the pressure from the families and from everybody else. Like, if I'm got the interest of Jeremiah Smith, I better make sure that Jeremiah Smith has a quarterback that he's playing with that can play. I thought that CJ Bailey looked good in terms of going out, and Dabo Swinney said this as well this week. He came out and he was kind of fearless. Like, they were in trouble against Louisiana Tech, and he came out and was like, all right, let's go. He gave him a spark, gave him some energy. This issue for me for the Clemson NC State game is that I think NC State's offensive line has been underwhelming, and I think that Clemson's defensive line is still really, really good. And if NC State can't block Clemson up front, then even if CJ Bailey is a performance upgrade, he is an experience downgrade. And if he's getting chased by Capehart and like the rest of that crew, it's gonna be a little bit of a long afternoon in Death Valley.
Is Peter Woods playing?
They say I need to double check it, but I think that we are trending towards yes.
Okay. I mean, he would matter. I don't think Clemson has great depth at defensive end.
Two games I'm wondering if y'all have a read on here,
Yeah.
thoughts on. First, Rutgers, Virginia Tech.
Yeah, I do. I've got great thoughts on this. I actually wanted to do this at the top of the show. Okay. So on one hand, it is like Virginia Tech getting called to the center of the room. Okay. Like, they had the Vanderbilt game, and then they've kind of been able to just lurk around the edges. And now it's like, no. You need to get called here into the middle. You're playing at home. You're playing against a Rutgers team that you know exactly what they are going to want to do. And if you can't stop them from doing what they want to do, then all this idea that you've got this super experienced team that's going to bring us the memories of old, and, this is what Virginia Tech is. Virginia Tech doesn't get run on in Lane Stadium. And so Virginia Tech called to the center of the room. On the other hand, what a win that could be for Rutgers to go into Lane Stadium, and what kind of confidence that group would get in terms of what this would be going forward. I think that Rutgers Virginia Tech is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it's the 8th most interesting game of the entire weekend for me.
Pressure pack game for Brent Pry, especially because of what happened at Vanderbilt.
Yes, 100%.
Huge.
Yeah, I don't think
preseason expectations.
I don't think it's a good game to watch, but I think it's got high stakes in terms of drama. It
Sounds like my kind of game.
Like, man, I tell you what. So this opened at 6. It got bet down. It touched 3 for a little bit yesterday or Monday. I grabbed some 3, and I don't even feel good about it. It was just one of those, like, mathematically, it's probably not going to sit at 3. It's going to go back up, so you just needed to do it. I think that says all you need to know. Like, you're laying only a field goal at home against Rutgers with the Hokies, and you're not comfortable with it. I mean, they look poorly coached. Like, they don't look well coached to me. Like, that's if I was a fan of that team, I'd be pissed.
There's a whole chapter of games this week. Horrendous game with intense implications.
God, yeah. I mean, you have Florida's best players liking Instagram posts calling for Billy Napier to be fired. I mean, that's a real thing.
You guys saw our buddy Brandon Marcello's report, right?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Give me all the groomers I can get. Give me all the groomers.
Oh, man.
John Gruden, and I think he lives in Tampa, right? He lives right there. We got to be careful with some of that phrasing.
Yeah, we got you again. Remember, what was it last year where you said, I love groomers, and now you're saying, give me all the groomers.
Give me all the groomers I can get. He's already angling for it. Pretty amazing.
I mean, he should try.
The chat seems to think Bud and I don't like each other. I love Bud. We fight. It's fine.
Hate each other.
We just don't do fake fights.
Yeah.
That's what I think. Like, that makes the better ones better. Or like the real ones better.
If all 4 of us agreed on everything all the time, this show would suck. Another game I have interest in, The Iron Skillet.
Hell yeah, let's go. All right,
Go.
5 p.m. Eastern time on the CW, where dreams go to die, though I don't really know what the actual stakes of this are. Isn't it SMU always gets taken over by TCU fans with this game? Oh man, I'm fired up for it. No one, there is only losing, I think, for this game. I think there's only one pissed off fan base. I don't think there is a elated fan base.
They're already pissed. They both lost in just like epically brutal fashion in the last game.
I mean, TCU's loss last week was just a kick to the nuts repeatedly. And then at SMU, you've already made the QB change. I just feel like there is it's called the Iron Skillet, and there is like a literal flame just simmering under this game where I feel like one of these fan bases is about to explode, and not in a good way.
But I will say, so we're going to Kevin Jennings. Kevin Jennings provides more run ability and wasn't running the football how UCF got back into and won the game against TCU. Uh-oh, that's problematic. That defensive staff should do a lot of soul searching this week when they think about how they're going to defend SMU. SMU's been, gross. We've only seen them a couple times, but it ain't been good. I love this game, and it'll
You got
be
to upgrade SMU
because of Kevin Jennings.
Yeah, they should have benched Stone after seeing him in week 1, in my opinion.
I think Josh Hoover has been good.
Yeah.
Yes.
As a proud owner of some Josh Hoover to lead the Big 12 in passing tickets, I would like to continue to see TCU not even attempt to run the football, and let's get some of those 60-1 shots home, because Josh Hoover is throwing that ball around the yard, baby. He is exciting.
Yeah, I was not a huge Josh Hoover fan last year, but he's been very impressive to start the season.
I wasn't either. I'm like, but there's some chance they can't run the ball at all. It's going to be just nonstop passing, and the volume gets you there.
He's done this weird thing called develop.
But it's
which happens sometimes, not often as it should. It feels like, but it does happen sometimes.
I'm very fired up for that one.
Is Baylor, Colorado a loser leaves town match? Not immediately, but at the end of the year. What are the odds the losing coach of this game is coaching for this team next year?
I
think it's about 0%.
Well, if Colorado wins, what are the odds the winning coach is coaching that team?
Well,
next
right.
year?
That's baked into the calculus here, I would say. But if they lose, definitely not.
For sure. Yeah.
As I've told you guys, one of my exercises to prepare for each weekend has been an exercise I call one-liners. Let's just come up with one thing that's just top of mind, snap judgment. Baylor, Colorado game probably doesn't need as much attention as it will get.
Yeah.
Put it on Colorado's tombstone.
I did not put them in my watch slate.
For your TV options.
For my graphic, no. I'll give you guys a sneak preview of the graphic. So noon is NC State at Clemson, Kansas, West Virginia, Tulane, Louisiana, JMU at UNC. Also, I put a note, this would be a great time to take some family photos because that is a terrible noon slate overall. Afternoon, you got to get back from those family photos because we got USC, Michigan, Arizona State, Texas Tech, Memphis, Navy, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Utah, Oklahoma State. So you need to be back by 3:30 on the couch.
That's not a ranking, right? If you're putting Arizona State, Texas Tech ahead of Oklahoma State.
No. The top one gets the main TV treatment, and then the next 4 get the quad box treatment. Gotcha.
And
then for the night slate, we got Tennessee at Oklahoma, main box. TCU, SMU, Miami, USF, Iowa, Minnesota, and of course, Cover 3 Live, 11:30, 11:15-ish.
Yeah.
As we recap the entire day in college football.
Miami USF is a sneaky game.
That's what I was just going to say.
Because USF has been just kind of hanging around against a lot of good teams, and Miami has not played a good team yet. I mean, that Florida win is just looking less and less impressive every day.
Yeah. There seems to be a lack of effort from the Florida, literally trying from the Florida defense. So it makes you kind of question. I think Miami's really good, but how good?
Yep. That's very, very fascinating in that one. Georgia Tech, Louisville. Louisville finally plays someone with the pulse.
Look ahead situation for the Cards too, as they travel to the Irish next week. That's a playoff elimination game, I think, unless Louisville turns around and wins the ACC.
Maybe.
Are we calling Georgia Tech fraudulent in 3 days?
No, because we know what Georgia Tech is. Georgia Tech fraudulent.
Powerhouse.
Fraudulent.
Florida State and Ireland. I don't know if you remember, Chip.
Fraudulent would consider that they don't do anything well. I think that Georgia Tech shows you enough glimpses of when they are really dangerous to suggest that they can be dangerous. Now, untrustworthy, inconsistent, that's fine, but I don't think that's fraudulent.
Not fraudulent, but fraudulent, right?
Flawed, yes,
They are
fraudulent.
flawed, like as to not be perfect. Yeah.
I'm gonna steal that word.
Yeah, fraudulent's good, especially as it's so close to flatulent.
I'm writing the 6-pack after this show. I'm probably gonna try to squeeze in fraudulent into that one now.
Yeah, what was it? Georgia. So first of all, it's Georgia Tech against a ranked double-digit. They are a double-digit dog against a ranked team in ACC play. Go ask Miami or North Carolina or Florida State how any of those things have gone for them. And then there are 3 teams in the country that meet the following criteria. Okay, they've had 230 plus offensive snaps and 20 plus offensive touchdowns. Ole Miss, Tennessee, Georgia Tech.
Yeah, but hasn't Georgia Tech played an extra game?
Not an extra game. They played 3.
Oh, that's right. They
Wait,
okay.
They have not had a bye yet, right?
They were off last week.
Okay,
Oh, so they're coming off a bye.
They didn't play an FCS?
I don't think so.
Maybe they did have a bye.
Oh no, they have played more. Ah,
okay.
no, George.
Yeah. See, making me question myself.
Georgia Tech stat pad. They're fraudulent. You know,
Well,
what?
I was looking at our fantasy football standings. I was like, damn, Georgia Tech players are really, really out far ahead. And like, oh, they played 4 games.
Yeah, they played 4 games. That's fraudulent. All right, cool.
How dare you lie to us, Chip?
I didn't lie to you. I gave
You lied. You lied to me. You lied to the people. You owe the tailgate an apology.
I gave you a misleading statistic. It was not a lie. It was misleading.
Chat, does Chip owe you an apology for
What he meant was
lying?
they've not played 4 FBS games, I'm sure.
No. It was a misleading statistic. I was bamboozled.
He misremembered.
Let's see. Anything else?
I love you all.
Okay.
Are we feeling comfortable with UNC over JMU?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. I am.
Yeah.
I mean, the spread is shockingly small for a JMU team that lost a ton off. Like JMU's team is now called Indiana. So, I mean, I don't know.
Jacoby Criswell showed up a week ago, and I think might be the quarterback.
You guys cranked the tempo back up, though, I noticed.
I didn't. It was North Carolina Central. I had other things to do.
So they're kind of similar to Oklahoma. Like Carolina against Minnesota, I think they were messing around with the helmet comms and they realized, oh, we need to go fast because the last 2 weeks they have gone. They returned. You guys were. Where's this at?
Chip was too busy watching Georgia Tech not play VMI.
Snapping the ball with 19.8 on the play clock. So that's a pretty good tempo.
Special teams. Well coached. It's going to be important. Yeah, Syracuse, Stanford.
Good weeknight games, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
App, you went and stole
that one, not so much, but the Friday night games are good.
All right.
Yeah. My wife is not thrilled with the spate of good Friday night matchups that are suddenly appearing every week.
Is it killing date night?
Yeah, Friday night was like the one time.
Yeah.
All right.
We're about to have Thursday night date night, I think, because I don't care about these NFL games on short rest, and I don't want to watch South Hap.
You don't want to watch South Alabama?
I mean, I'm sicko mode, but like that.
Bluff Bothwell.
They both look pretty, so I don't know.
All right.
I'll see you guys.
We will be back Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time with our locks for week 4. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at BudElliott3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
4